Welcome to LSAT Demon Daily. I'm Josh Mansfield, the producer of the Demon Daily podcast, and I am also a teacher here at the Demon. Today have a really exciting episode. This is part one of two of our panel on what it takes to score a 175 plus. We're going to have two episodes in this series, one that'll release this week, one that'll release next week, where I get the opportunity to talk with four of our amazing teachers and tutors here at the Demon, all of whom scored above a 175. They're going to tell you about their stories, about their study habits, their patterns, what they struggled with on the LSAT, what they see as teachers for students who are aspiring to get better at the test. And regardless of where you're at in your studying, whether you're just starting out or you're in that 170 range trying to break into the 175 plus mark, there's going to be advice in here for you. This advice is one that is universal and I think teaches a really valuable lesson about the principles that we teach here at the Demon matter and apply to people of all scoring brackets. So I hope you enjoy. Make sure to take some great notes because we had a really, really awesome conversation. Today's episode is going to feature Billy and Robert, and then next week we will have Ala and Abi who are going to be joining me. So thanks for listening and enjoy. Joining me now here on the Demon Daily are two of our esteemed teachers that I am so excited to introduce, both 175 plus scorers. First, I've got Billy and I've got Robert. Welcome both. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, the first thing I want to do, I want to give you both an opportunity to introduce yourself. Tell me, tell everybody a little bit about, your name, the score that you got. What do you do for the Demon? Are you going to law school? Why did you decide to go to law school? Give us like a 30-second, here's what we should know about you as kind of a background prior to us kind of getting into this panel and this discussion. Billy, why don't you go first?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, I'm Billy. I got a 177 on the LSAT. That was back in 2021, actually. So it's been quite a while since I took the official test, but I loved it so much when I was studying for it. I decided to stay in the LSAT world. I've worked for LSAT Demon for a year now, actually. It's pretty crazy to say that. Time flies, but it's been a lot of fun. I currently oversee the Ask team. I have an incredible team. They make my job easy despite a pretty busy summer so far. So you've probably seen me or gotten my responses on the other end of questions, and you've gotten lots of responses from my team, which I hope have been helpful. I'm also a teacher for LSAT Demon. I teach two classes every week. I'm a tutor. I go to live events for the Demon. So I have a lot of hats at LSAT Demon, and yeah, kind
Awesome.
of off there.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Billy. Robert?
Well, Billy got a 177. I only got a 176. I think I'm going to retake. I like that. Yeah, I'm losing on this already. I'm Robert. I'm a teacher and a tutor with the Demon. I've been here a little over a year. Yeah, I'm going over a year now. And I also help in the Ask button from time to time. Just jump in and help out when I can. And I help also write explanations. I really enjoy doing that. That's a lot of fun. Writing explanations, going back through and rewriting some of the old explanations. It's a lot of fun. And I am not in law school. I am reapplying this upcoming cycle.
Okay.
We can talk. We can
I'd
talk
love to.
about that later if we need
I
to.
would say we're definitely going to talk applications
Yeah,
now. So
reapply.
that's
Yeah,
that's going on the list because I think the thought of reapplying is one that's terrifying for students. So I'm excited to talk about that.
yeah.
First part I want to start with starting for your LSAT journey. You start studying for the LSAT. What does your study schedule look like? We have a variety, students all the time, especially during the summer right now, have a lot of undergraduates who are taking time, aren't in school trying to study, use this opportunity in the summer. So for you, when you think about ideal study schedules, what are the principles that are the most important that you followed or that you recommend to your students now? Maybe you have what not to do advice included in that.
Yeah, I think it's about holding yourself to a really high standard when you are studying. It's less about, okay, I need to do this specific number of hours, or I need to be studying full time. No, it's about during the time that you are studying during the day, what standard are you holding yourself to? If you can do that for 1 hour a day where you're giving me your best hour of the day, you're fully focusing when you're doing any questions that you're drilling through or on your time section, and you're fully focusing, thoroughly reviewing every question, that's the best way to study. Once you start losing that focus, losing that determination when you're studying, say it's been a long day at work, long day at school, there's diminishing returns. You develop bad habits if you don't have that full level of focus. So I recommend that when people start small. Start with an hour a day, work from there. If you have more time in your day where you feel like you can do more, you grow to love this test, you think you can maintain that level of focus, then keep going with it. But don't start structuring your study schedule by building in a ton of hours only to then lose focus during those hours and develop bad habits. Start small, stay focused, then build from there.
Yeah, I like what Billy just said. I think one of the things that I try to emphasize to students is make whatever your study plan is purpose driven, right? What's the goal? What is it you're trying to accomplish? And something that Billy touched on right there is oftentimes people think more is more and more is not more, right? And they'll overbuild these study sessions and they think that they've got to do all of these PTs and they've got to do so many questions, and then at the end of the day they're no better off, right? As a matter of fact, sometimes they're worse off. And one of the worst things we can do is I think misalign ourselves with the wrong goal, right? The goal isn't just to do LSAT questions, it's to learn from them, it's to improve skills. This is a skills-based test, not a knowledge-based test. So I always try to ask students whenever they ask me, what's my study schedule supposed to look like? And I say, well, what are you trying to get better at? What are you trying to accomplish? For me personally, if I had to go back and do it all over again, knowing what I know now, I would have focused my initial period of studying. I probably would have taken a PT and then not touched a PT or a time section after that until my accuracy was at a level where I felt confident I could sit in front of a question, forget the clock, I could just sit in front of a question and I was confident I could figure it out. Because if you can sit in front of a question, regardless of anything else, but you're just in front of a question and you can figure it out and you can solve the question, well, then now all we need to do is get better at that, and then you will get faster at that. And then now all of a sudden you'll be able to solve questions under time conditions. So first do it right, then do it fast. So I prioritize accuracy first and foremost.
Robert, I know just a little bit about your background and because
Hmm.
of some things that you've mentioned in just before the show and in meetings.
Hmm.
Your background's in, is it performance psychology? Is that what you've said?
Yeah, I studied philosophy
Okay.
and performance psychology, and professionally, I am I guess you would call it a fixer, right?
Okay.
I built a career in the corporate world as a fixer. So essentially, I'm the one that has to go in and like untangle complex problems and design solutions. Essentially, I just solve problems for a living. That's what I do. But to do that, you always have to have the goal in mind, right? You
Hmm.
can't create a plan if you don't know what you're trying to accomplish. And that's one of the first things I'm always asking is, hey, what's the goal? Because people are always saying, is this the right way to study? Is this the wrong way to study? Am I doing the question right? Am I doing it wrong? Well, right or wrong compared to what, right? And
Hmm.
I like to talk to students about thinking about is what I'm doing more effective or less effective to get me to my goal, right? And of course, you have to have a goal in mind. What is it you're trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? And that's what you can use to judge and to gauge your performance on. So,
Based on that answer, it sounds like you didn't walk away from your job while you were studying for the LSAT.
oh, absolutely not. No, 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 no. No, no.
How,
I worked about, 50, 60 hours a week.
mhm.
At the time when I started studying the LSAT, uh, I had a lot of territory to cover, so I was traveling a lot. And on the plane or in the hotel that I could kind of shut myself off from the rest of the world and I could focus on studying. But I was also doing it. I started studying in fall of 22, 23. No, fall of 22. And that was my senior year of college as well. So I was doing the senior year of college working and then trying to do the LSAT at the same time. Don't recommend that, but if you're going to do it, right? Get after
Yeah.
it.
Well, and to that point, then you're able to. It's. I think it's valuable for students to hear. I was in the same boat. I was working a lot of hours. I had a newborn when I decided to start studying for the LSAT. Uh,
Oh,
I don't know. Not. I also don't recommend
yeah.
that either. But that idea of like every minute you sit down, that it's purposeful, and that, as Billy says, you're making time in your schedule that you can actually adhere to, right? It's
Yes.
so much easier to approach this test when you're asking yourself, when can I find an hour in the day, as opposed to these massive chunks. Billy, when did you start studying for the LSAT? What was going on in your life at the time? How long did you study for?
Yeah, so I was going from my junior year of college to my senior year. I got a research grant with my best friend, so we could stay in this dorm at the university and work on a project together throughout the summer. We knocked out the project pretty quickly in the summer, and so we just had our place to stay. We had a stipend to afford, ramen and cheap groceries to sustain us for that summer, and we were able to study as much as we wanted to and needed to. So we had pretty much an ideal setup. He was very good at the test. He was better than me. He was improving more quickly than me. And having that study partner throughout the summer, I think was almost my secret weapon to really making quick improvement. Because one, having him to sort of explain things to me, him going through the process with me, and us learning together in that way was really useful. But also when he didn't understand something and I had to explain it to him, and I felt like I understood it a bit better than him, having to actually articulate that helped me to understand the test so much better. So that's why I think, working on the ask button has helped me to understand this test so much more deeply. That's why I think our ask button heroes at LSAT Demon have such an advantage. It's so useful for them to be answering ask button questions because they can really improve in that way, helping students on the ask button who are asking questions. But yeah, having that study partner was super useful. I started off slow throughout the summer, like I said, just studying a couple hours a day. Learned that I am an LSAT nerd. I really enjoy this test.
Hmm.
I loved seeing my practice test scores improve throughout the summer. And so I went from studying an hour a day to some days studying 8 hours. But I will emphasize that I was obsessed. I loved it. I was very lucky to have a schedule that permitted me to be able to do that. And so I was able to hold myself to that high standard throughout the day when I was doing that. I don't necessarily recommend studying full time, studying 8 hours a day, unless you're weird like me, where your schedule permits and your mindset slash personality permits that. But that's how I did it. I packed a lot of studying into about 2.5 months. And yeah, I took the August 2021 LSAT and got a 177, and I was out.
Wow. I want to come back to a point, but first, you and many people have kind of given this study buddy advice, and if we I'm sure we have a lot of listeners who think, well, I don't have anybody near me, right? I'm the only one in my family. This is not something that anyone else around me is doing. Fortunately, if you make a demon free account, then you get access to our Discord, and there's an entire channel in our Discord that is dedicated to helping you find study buddies. You can put in your score, what you're looking for. Maybe you want to study with someone who's better than you, and you have the opportunity to have someone push you. Maybe you want someone who isn't scoring as well as you, so you can work on teaching other people the test. I'm going to link the invite in the show notes. Please take advantage. Come join our Discord. Come join a community of a lot of people taking the LSAT together. I think there's something like 5,000 people in that Discord. I promise you can find somebody who is you would like to be a part of as well. Billy, I want to give you 2 seconds as well to describe what the Ask Button Hero role is and give students an opportunity to hear about that. Because I think if we're, this discussion is designed for two purposes. One, obviously, we're trying to think about ideas that are applicable to students in all score ranges. That as you think about your prep, there are ways that you can improve. But there are students for sure who are in the practice testing in the 160s, high 160s, low 170s, looking to break that 175 mark. And I think the Ask Button would be such an amazing opportunity as an Ask Button hero. Do you want to go ahead and tell everybody what that looks like?
For sure. Yeah, so if you're not a Demon student, you're not familiar with the website, the Ask button is a feature that we have next to every question that you'll ever do on the Demon. We also have it next to our lessons and a couple other places on the website. It's basically an opportunity for you, if you're not understanding the question, if you're not understanding our written explanation or video explanation, and you need something clarified for you, you can type in a question, and we have a team of tutors there to answer your question within 24 hours and hopefully a lot faster than that. So a lot of the writers on our team are professional writers, they work for the Demon, but a good chunk of our team are actually students currently studying with the Demon, just like you, asking the question. So if on the Demon website you get a 170 or better on a practice test, a notification is going to pop up with an opportunity to apply to be an Ask Button hero. You'll get a couple sample Ask Button questions, and if you do a good job in answering those questions, we'll bring you on the team. And we just ask that you work 4 hours per week answering Ask Button questions. And if you do that, you get a free live account, which is a $2.95 a month value. So you get access to all the features of the website, no payment, and all you have to do is basically do an additional 4 hours of studying with the hundreds of study buddies that we constantly have writing in questions. So it's a great opportunity for anybody sort of later in their study journey where they're already breaking into the 170s and they want to make that final push into the mid or high 170s.
Awesome. Thanks, Billy. Now that we've done our little pivot of some resources that are available to you, I want to circle back to something that you mentioned, Billy, and that Robert elicited a reaction from you. Billy mentioned that he loved the test. And
Hmm.
I, with both of you, love this test. Always thought it was so much fun. I've got two questions for you. Number one, why is loving the test a prerequisite to scoring well? And number two, what would you say to a student who finds themselves maybe with a little bit more of an adversarial relationship with this test right now? Robert, I'll pivot to you. I'll let you go first.
If we're talking about scoring in the 175 range, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
what, 99th percentile, right? I
Yeah.
don't care who you are or what you do. If you're top 1% at anything in the world, you're elite at that thing, right? Whatever that is. And I don't know anybody that can be elite at something if they don't have the internal drive and focus and the desire to want to be great at something. If you absolutely abhor it or you just have this massive disdain or, like you said, an adversarial relationship to it, how can you appreciate the beauty that it offers, right? When I look at questions now, and I can put myself in the mind of somebody who really struggled on this test. I got a 137 as a diag. And not only once did I get that, but I got that twice. And I got my second 137 after 4 months of studying with another test prep company, right? And it's like I just spent all this money and got nowhere. I understand how they feel when they're looking at the test and it looks like you're reading some foreign language or hieroglyphics and you just don't understand what you're looking at. I know that frustration. But I also understand what it's like now when I can read a question and see the beauty in it, right? And see, wow, look at the genius that it took to use that play on words or to have that contextual nuance to create that question and to have that answer as the right answer. It's genius, you know? And I think that's one of the things that you start to really appreciate once you're able to see it. And initially, you're not able to see it. And most people aren't. And even if you come in and you're really good at it, there's still layers to this test that you don't see. And I often tell students the hardest part of my journey, going from 137 to 176, wasn't getting from 137 to 160. It was going from 169 to 171. That was the hardest, right? And then the second hardest was staying in the mid to upper 170s, making that next jump. Because when you suck at something, you can close your eyes, throw a rock, and hit something that you need to get better at. But when you're good at something, it often becomes very difficult to get from good to great because now we're talking about minor adjustments. Now we're talking about having to intentionally face what we're not good at so we can find those things that are opportunities. You have to realign your relationship with failure at that point and see failure as an opportunity, not a door, but a pathway to get to the next level. You can't do that when you have well, I shouldn't say can't. I don't know anybody that can do that when they have that adversarial relationship. So I think when you start to get your improvements and you start to see why things work the way they do, you start to appreciate the beauty. And then this test becomes addictive. It's a game. It's just a game now. Long-winded answer, but I wanted to give some context there.
That's great. Yeah. Billy?
Yeah, Robert said it beautifully. I don't have a ton to add to that. I'll just say you're going to be spending so much time with this test,
Hmm.
hundreds of hours, that you better find a way to enjoy it. Otherwise, I said before, you need to give me your best hour every day or best several hours every day. If you are dreading spending time with the tests, that's just by definition not going to be your highest level of focus, your best hours of the day. So you need to learn to love it if you don't. And I think the way Robert described it will help people to find a way to love it. Something else I'll
Hmm.
add, if you're all about the dollars and cents, is every point on this test is probably worth like $10,000 in scholarships.
I
Hmm.
love it. I
Go
love
from
it.
165 to a 175, you're now going from, maybe not getting into your dream school to getting in with a significant scholarship. So doing well on this test, making those improvements can change your life, and maybe that will motivate somebody to really embrace this test for the incredible opportunity that it is.
I want, if I could,
Yeah,
I'd like to
please, please.
dovetail something that Billy just said, because it's brilliant seeing the perspective shift of what this test really can do and what it's really all about. I often talk about that when I'm talking to students who don't want to push their cycle and they just want to have this arbitrary timeline because they want to go. Well, newsflash, the test doesn't care when we want to go to law school. It doesn't care. It's testing our skills. It's not testing our timeline, so it doesn't care. But the idea here is that perspective shift is key. And I know we'll get to that. We'll talk about that later on. But one of the things I'd like people to understand is not loving the test. It's okay right now. It's okay. One of the keys to greatness is consistency. There's going to be days where you just don't feel like doing anything. You don't want to study, right? But that's also an opportunity to not negotiate with yourself. And that was one of the rules that I had. With my busy schedule, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There were days where I did not have time to study. I just didn't. And there were things I just couldn't get to. But it was non-negotiable that I had to touch the LSAT every day. I had to touch it. I just had to do something, whether it was just an LR question or my cheat for me was because I really sucked at games. That's what really got me with the demon. Matt's teaching of worlds just completely changed the game for me. And I think I went like 5 months with not missing a single game question ever because it was just so much fun. Like after getting, and that was a lot of work, guys, trust me. But then it was just that was my warm up. Like to get
Yeah.
my pre-game routine is I'm going to do a couple games real quick. Okay, now I'll study. Um, but the idea is you can use that as an opportunity. One of the most pivotal times to go to the gym on your weight loss journey is the day you don't want to go. And sometimes winning is just going. It's not actually working out, but it's just the fact that you didn't let yourself stay home. So sometimes winning on the LSAT is, hey, I did an LSAT question. Great, you won. And then incrementally, that mental friction will start to become less and less and less. And then it'll just start to be what you do. And that's incrementally how you build your, I call it LSAT professionalism, right? Be a pro. And this is start how you start to develop being a pro because trust me, in the real world, there's stuff you got to do every day that you don't want to do, but you got to get it done, right? So I look at that as an opportunity. It's okay if you don't like it. Use that to your advantage. Challenge yourself. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it. I want to pivot to the concepts now and a little bit more focused on the LSAT itself. You both are teachers. I want to take advantage of that teaching experience and skills that you have. And so when you think about concepts that either were the hardest for you to grasp or are difficult for students to grasp, that you oftentimes will see, this is a barrier that students need to get over, whether it's on LR or RC. What is something that you see or have seen in your own studying that was difficult?
I think an important skill to develop, and I know, Josh, I believe you have a prediction fundamentals
I
class, if I'm
do. Yep. That's
yeah. Yeah, I have a class called LR Psychics, which is
yeah.
the same kind of idea. We're trying to see into the future. We're trying to make
Hmm.
predictions about what is to come, and we're trying to leverage our predictions on the LSAT, specifically on the LR section for that class.
Yep.
Um, so skill number one is, well, there's plenty of skills, but skill number one that I'm going to talk about is developing a prediction using your understanding of the passage. You have to, one, master the passage,
Yep.
then you have to use your understanding of the passage to get an idea of what's to come. Sometimes you can come up with an almost verbatim prediction and you know what the answer is going to be. Sometimes the best you can do is just make a prediction about what the correct answer is going to do, but you always want to have some expectation, some prediction for what you're going to find in the answers. So that's something that you hear a lot, but I think something that's really important and a skill that you constantly have to hone as you're trying to improve at the LSAT is how do you most effectively leverage those predictions?
Hmm.
Because I think people will make that prediction, go into the answers, and then just assess every answer with a blank slate,
They put
you
that
know.
prediction up on the bulletin board and they put it to the side. They
Yeah.
never look at it again.
Yeah, they're like,
Yeah.
okay, well, let's see. Maybe A has a point here, even though it does not resemble my prediction at all. No, you need to be reading these answer choices with a super high level of skepticism. I know Nate
Hmm.
says it all the time, 80% of answer choices are wrong.
Hmm.
Go in with that mindset and go in with the confidence that, hey, I know what I'm expecting going into these answers. That wasn't it. That's probably not going to be the answer. Instead of saying, well, I came up with a different prediction, but maybe I missed that point. So let's see if I can fit it into, the hole in the puzzle that it clearly doesn't fit. So use your predictions, leverage your predictions to read really skeptically through the answer choices. That both contributes to your, effectiveness, your ability to find the correct answer, but also your efficiency. When you know what you're looking for, it's so much easier to see through those wrong answers
Hmm.
and just breeze by them. People are always asking, how do I maintain my accuracy while also going fast? It's about doing the work on the front end,
Hmm.
coming up with a good prediction, and when you do that and know how to use that prediction, you'll fly through the answer choices. But again, you have to make that long-term investment both in your studying to be able to develop that skill of prediction and when you're actually doing the question, go slowly, understand the passage, come up with a prediction. When you know how to use it, questions become easy.
The thing that I tell my students, if they finish an answer choice and say the phrase, "Huh, I didn't think about that," they probably should just
Yeah,
eliminate it.
yeah,
Like it's if you're doing it right, if you're thinking about predictions, "Huh, I didn't think about that," is probably a sign that they want you to look at this, but you really weren't thinking about it because it wasn't in the passage.
yeah. And after you go through the passage, you shouldn't proceed from it unless you have the confidence that you fully
Yeah,
understood it from every angle and
yeah.
you know what you're looking for in the answers. If you're going to the answers, you come across that and you think, I didn't think about that. Well, either one, you weren't reading the passage closely enough, or two, you don't have enough confidence in your prediction, which you probably should. So again, that's about a mindset shift.
Robert.
That's interesting. All three of us have prediction classes because mine's the LR Masters on Monday, and but we only do level fours and fives. But interesting. I think one of the things about predictions, Billy said it. I never try to predict precise answers, right? Because especially when you're doing level fours and fives, good luck. Good luck. Because
Sure.
even then, you're going to predict a precise answer. You're going to start reading it and go, wait, what is that thing saying? Right? And it's not going to say it the way you think. And so I instead am looking for what is it going to accomplish, right? And I'm going into it looking for a specific thing. Like if it's going to be a weakening question, I have an idea of what it's weakening because we're not going to get an argument about the law and we're going to weaken it by something happening on Mars. Like that's just not how this works. It's not going to be something. But one of the things I often see is I kind of break things down into two different categories. I like to simplify things, but there's some common themes I see most students get challenged with when it comes to approaching questions and predictions and things like that. And then there's things I see that higher level students who are trying to get from 170 to 175. There's one thing specifically I see they do, and it's almost like clockwork. And I know I did it 1,000 times too. But generally speaking, overall, I think one of the challenges that um, I think most students have is not understanding what the mission of the LSAT really is, right? Understanding that it's challenging us to read and think like attorneys, right? I mean, we get an opportunity. What are attorneys? Attorneys are the people who they're the ones that get handed the most challenging, complicated documents to make sure that the people aren't getting screwed. They're reading the things that other people can't or won't. Well, we're all signing up to be those people. So one of the most important, I think, pieces of advice I ever give is be a pro. Learn to read like the attorney you want to become, right? It's all about precision. And I think the LSAT is testing our ability to read precisely, but then critically. And that means, can you spot the details? And do you understand the scope of what this evidence proves? But then can you step back and see contextually the bigger picture of what that means and what it's implying and what it can do. And I think that's one of the challenges a lot of students have is not understanding. They're always searching for these shortcuts or what I call the silver bullet answers, right? I know you guys get them in class too, and they're trying to take away this one silver bullet that they can then reapply to every flaw question ever. And it's like,
Hmm.
yeah, but
Hmm.
what did that flaw question say though, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's very important to keep context in mind and to approach every question one question at a time. I think that's incredibly important. But there's also a bunch of others, and I don't want to take all the time. I'll give it back to Billy too. But there's some specific things I think that students can do in the overall picture. But then specifically, one thing for sure that I think that they can do if they're struggling in the low 170s or trying to crack into the 170s and wanting to get up to that next level, I almost guarantee they're doing one thing that we can talk about.
Uh, so there's something specific you think that they're doing, or do you mean
Mhm.
every 170 score has one thing,
No, I
or
think
is
I
that?
think the vast majority, there's a common mistake that a lot of students make. And
I'd love to hear what.
every tutoring student I work with that is
Okay.
trying to break into that level, they're doing it. And I know because
Okay.
I
What
did it
is it?
too.
What's that thing?
What is it?
Yeah.
They
Holding us in suspense
Curious.
here, Robert.
Yeah.
they don't they're not reading precise enough and they're over interpreting what answers are saying. They'll read an answer, especially in level fours and fives. They're going to read an answer and because of, and you guys touched on it. You both just touched on it ahead of time, and this is why it's happening. They're reading answers initially, their approach to the answer. Our brain is the greatest search engine in the world. We ask it to think of something, it's going to go think of it. We ask it to find something, it's going to go find it. Whatever we put our focus on, our attention on, that's what we're going to pay attention to. It just is what it is. If you're approaching answers wondering how they could be right, your brain is going to try to convince you why this answer is right. But if you're approaching the question like, I need to find out why it's wrong, then you're going to actually talk yourself out of correct answers sometimes, which is fine. I'd rather somebody once in a while talk themselves out of a correct answer because you're going to end up talking yourself out of all the rest of them. And then you're going to have to go back and reevaluate it, which is great, by the way, as opposed to talking yourself into wrong answers. Or worse yet, getting bullied out of your prediction because you have this great prediction, you did the passage real well, you get into the answers, and then you're like, oh, but maybe could this explain because yeah, if no, no, stop. Everything that you're about to put after if, show me where that answer actually says that. Like explicitly says that, or it's a provable consequence of that. And if it's not there, then show me in the passage where we have proof of everything you're about to just add to that answer because it ain't there, right? Because correct answers don't need our help. They're plug and play. They answer the question without our help. It's our job to understand what they're saying. But once we understand it and we understand their provable consequences, then there's no assumptions that we need to be making on correct answers. There just isn't. And oftentimes when you get stuck between two answers, I promise you, you either misunderstood or misread something somewhere, or you're overinterpreting what that answer actually said. And when you go back and hold that answer accountable, you stop being the wrong answer attorney and you start being the answer prosecutor. And you're like, no, 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 no. Prove how you're right. And when you see that that answer actually doesn't say what you think it does, and then all of a sudden it's just like, oh, well, that's not the correct answer because it doesn't actually say what I thought. And learning how to read very precisely is, I think, one of the most important things to break into that higher level 175 plus range. Incredibly important.
I think what's really valuable about that answer, Robert, is that students will often come to us, and I certain you two have heard it as well, and they'll say, "Well, my problem is I just overthink." And I'm overthinking answer choices, I'm overthinking passages, and I've never liked that phrase, because overthink, like, you have to be thinking about this, you have to be engaged. And the problem is that their solution to overthinking is like shut off that active engaged reading that Billy was describing, and
Yeah,
instead like sitting back and just kind of reading it on face. And that's not the right answer either.
yeah.
But to your point, Robert, it's engaged reading that just focuses on what is actually said in the passage.
What can you prove? What can you
Mm-hmm.
prove? That's what I'm always doing when I'm reading a passage. The first thing on just about every passage, and we stick with LR. Just about every passage is either going to be an argument, or what do they say? Argument or set of facts. Essentially, we're getting evidence or we're getting an argument. And what's argument?
Mm-hmm.
Evidence. And what someone else thinks about the evidence, right?
Yep.
Well, what the author thinks the evidence proves. So guess what? This entire test is evidence evaluation. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
You want to know what the LSAT is? It's reading evidence and going, wait a minute, what does that prove? What can I prove with that? And that was a game changer for me in RC when I started reading it. It was Nate. It was Nate. Nate saying, "This is lawyer shit." Open and close lesson plan, I think, is the most important lesson for me. I have it bookmarked to this day. It's mandatory. I give it to every tutoring student on our first session. Like, hey, you need to go to the open and close lesson plan. You need to understand, read the passages like a record of evidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even when there's an argument, that's fine. But what does the evidence actually prove? Okay, but what does the author think the evidence proves? And even in RC, I started reading the passage as if I was trying to pin the author down on what I could prove they believe, right? Because, correct answers in RC are proven by the evidence, right? Incorrect answers are either going to be disproven by the passage or they just don't have any evidence to support them. And that's where I also developed well, can't prove it, can't pick it. If I can't prove it, I don't have evidence for it. Well, I can't pick it. Why am I picking that answer? I can't prove that, you know? And I think if you get really good at understanding what did the evidence actually prove, then you're going to get really good at understanding, was this a good argument or not? I think students struggle on that too. When they say good argument, what does that mean? Well, it means is the argument broken, like flawed, or is it incomplete, right? And I think having that ability to see whether or not you know what you can prove, you're gonna kill the test, right? Because that's what it's actually testing, I think, is our ability to read like that. So answers too. What can you prove that answer means,
Mm-hmm.
right? Could you walk into court and say D actually means this, or is it still gray, right? Is it still kind of vague and gray and it's argumentative? Correct answers aren't argumentative, they're
Yeah.
conclusive. So,
That idea of reading the answer choices the same way, I think, is
mhm.
a fundamental part of that prediction side, that,
Yeah,
as Billy's talking about as well, that usage of your prediction, when you're bringing your prediction and using it against these answer choices, that's how you know you're actually reading it with intention.
absolutely. Absolutely.
The last two questions I want to ask are a little bit broader, open-ended, and I'm going to let you two go wherever you want with them. First one, you have a student who comes to you. I had a diagnostic of 150. Robert, you said you had 137. Billy, what was
137.
yours? Is it going to be like a 168?
It
Yeah.
was it was a 164.
Okay, all right. So you had a great
Billy's
starting
just
point.
good. He's just good at
Billy's
things,
just
man. He's
good.
just
Billy's just
good at
good at
stuff. He's
this.
just good at stuff.
I've always loved the
No, but
LSAT.
Billy, I don't know if you caught it. Billy's competitive though. Did you catch it when he was talking about his study partner? He noted, I think,
Mm-hmm.
more than
Mm-hmm.
once about, well, this person was better at me for a second,
Yeah,
but I didn't
At
at
first,
first,
yeah.
but no, no, I got
a better
better than
climber
him.
before.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
Billy's got that competitive in him. I see it.
Yeah. So starting off, first student comes to you. They are at their diagnostic, somewhere between a 164 and a 137. And they say, hey, I'm looking at these top schools. I've got a great GPA. I want to score above a 175. What are you're just starting out with them. Maybe they've been studying for a month or two. What are you telling this student about their journey to get to that 175?
I would say set goals, not timelines. I think honestly, the number one thing that limits people's potential on the LSAT is them setting an artificially limited timeline.
You
Like
mean
if
like
you
I want to take the August test to apply this fall?
Yes, exactly. I want to take
Yeah.
this test, so I'm registering now. I
Yeah.
need to apply in this cycle.
Mhm.
Therefore, I have 5 months to study or 3 months to study. It's amazing how many people want to go into the summer and they say like, okay, I have one attempt this summer, and that's just what I'm going for. I'll take whatever improvement I can get over this period. Remember, you're applying against people who took their time, who maximized their attempts. Remember, you get 5 attempts every 5 years. I think you get seven lifetime. You're applying against people who played the game the right way, and you're limiting the amount of time that you had to prepare for the test, and you're limiting the number of attempts that you have on the test, putting yourself at a major disadvantage. So instead of setting a timeline and saying like, okay, how can I maximize my improvement within that timeline? Say, here's what I know I can achieve. Here's what I know I want to achieve to put myself into position to get scholarships at the schools I want to go to, and then study until you get there. I think, something that we all have in common, whether, I studied for a couple months or I think other people on these 175 panels studied for 18 months, is we all waited until our practice test scores were, uh, we waited until our practice test scores were where we wanted them to be before we took the official test. We were
Yes.
goal driven. We weren't just satisfied with a certain amount of improvement after a certain amount of time. So get greedy, believe in yourself, and be patient. That patience is so key. If it takes a year and a half to get there, it's worth it because if you improve even 5 more points on this test, if you go from 170 to 176, that can be 6 figures in debt worth of a difference, or an entirely new door that could change your life that opens up just because you waited an additional cycle. So be patient on this test. That's the first thing I like to always drill into my students.
Robert?
Yeah, I have to again piggyback on what Billy's saying. It's he's just good at everything, right? He's just good at giving great answers. Um, I think the biggest flaw in the LSAT is how we is our relationship with time. There's three ways I think students, and I put myself in this category, screw up our relationship with time and turn it into the biggest flaw. First, people let their timeline dictate when they're going to test instead of letting their performance decide. And I'm always trying to tell people, don't set yourself up to fail just by testing before you're ready. It doesn't do you any good. You're just collecting bad scores for no reason, right? There's it's something that's totally within our control, and having some arbitrary timeline uh, makes no sense. If if it's something that's worth doing, it's worth doing right. And I'm very thankful that I did not rush the process, and even to the point where I'm reapplying, right? I'm pushing the cycle again, and I'm the old guy. Like I'm the old guy. I got less time to go to be a lawyer than anybody, right? So, but for me, it's not about just getting there. It's about being the best one I can possibly be. And a goal without a plan is simply a wish. So I'm not going to wish my way into being a lawyer. I'm going to plan my way and strategize, and I'm going to set myself up for the best success possible. And that's what I always try to get students to understand, right? And pushing your cycle, like Billy says, you can go from somebody who wouldn't even get into some schools to getting scholarships. Well, what are you doing in the next year that could pay you $225,000? Studying for the LSAT can, plus interest. I mean, you could save yourself 300 grand plus. I don't know what else anybody else is doing that's going to save them 300 grand over the next 6 months. Just all you have to do is push a little bit and just study a test. But I think that the two other things real quick for students that where we fail with time is we waste time obsessing over long-term results that always seem out of reach instead of focusing on the behaviors that actually create those results in the long term. And so I always try to tell people focus on what you can do today. Winning for me in studying is Did you learn something today? Now, that's one of the things I always tell students in the beginning of my classes. Like, hey, my goal is you take away one thing today that's going to help you uh, on your journey. If you did, we win. That's it. If you can get 1% better every day, or just one thing, learn one thing, you won studying today. Congratulations, right? You don't have to learn it all in one day, but are you better today than you were yesterday? And I think one of the flaws that we have is we're always comparing forward. We need to be comparing backwards. Don't compare yourself to the person that you're trying to become. Compare yourself to the person who you were yesterday. Your competition is your best self yesterday. Because if you keep competing against your best self yesterday, eventually you're going to surpass the person who you aspire to be. So that's how you get there. But if you're constantly looking forward, all you're going to see is your deficiencies. You're not going to see your opportunities. So, and I think finally, one of the real things that I see people doing is they sacrifice accuracy for speed, and it makes no sense. There's no bonus points for finishing a section. Like you don't get bonus points for that. Yeah, I think one of the things we have to focus on is LSAT's a 100% commission job, right? We're getting paid for the work. All we do is we get answers correct, and at the end we turn in our correct answers and we get paid. We get a score. And the idea is that, like I said, I've seen a bunch of LSAT volunteers running around because they're not getting paid for all this work. They're doing all this free work, right? Because they're in such a rush to do questions instead of getting correct answers. And I think the idea here is reevaluating what we're trying to do. And that's prioritize your accuracy above all, because accuracy is what's going to get you paid. And at the end of the day, no one cares how fast we do something wrong. So you want to be fast, but you want to be accurately fast. And the better you get at being accurate, the faster you're going to get, the more you're going to get paid. So I always tell students, first we do it right, then we do it fast. Stop worrying about the clock. Don't worry about it. Once you get good at this test, you just get faster at it. And it's the right kind of fast, the fast that gets you paid. Right.
Absolutely. Well, I want to say thank you to both of you. This was an incredible discussion, and I know a lot of our listeners are going to find a lot of insight here. So, thank you both. If you would like to come and join Billy or Robert in some of their classes, I'm sure they'd love to have you. I'm sure they'll answer any questions that you have. So, make sure to come join the Demon and be a part of these classes and continue to learn from both two very fantastic teachers and, of course, top scorers here on the LSAT. Thank you both for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, John.
Sleep in.
Yeah.
Bye.
If you guys have any questions about what it takes to score 175 or any other questions, email in at daily@lsatdemon.com and make sure to share your LSAT success news with us as well. Thanks for listening.